When it comes to period dramas, Hornblower stands tall as one of the very best ever put to screen. Across its 8 feature-length episodes, it brought to life the Napoleonic Wars with a level of grit, character, and seafaring authenticity that's rarely been matched on television. It's a series that balances the high-octane action with the quieter human moments. And at the centre of it all is young Griffith's Horatio Hornblower, a man of humble origins trying to navigate a rigid naval hierarchy while holding onto his integrity. Around him, we've got a wonderful ensemble of characters: Archie Kennedy with his loyalty and tragic arc, Bush with his steadfast professionalism, and even the admirals and enemies who test Hornblower's resolve. Together, they make the series feel alive and grounded, a story as much about people as it is about battles. Now, it is worth saying right from the start that there are no bad episodes of Hornblower. Each one offers something unique, whether it's tense naval strategy, personal dilemmas, or sweeping action on the high seas. What follows isn't a list of good versus bad, but simply my personal ranking. So with that in mind, let's set sail and count down all 8 episodes of Hornblower. At number 8, I have the very last episode created, Duty. Now, as the finale episode of the series, Duty isn't quite Hornblower at its best, but what makes it stand out, for better or for worse, is the way it shifts Horatio's character into a more complex, even uncomfortable territory. On his wedding day, he admits to Bush that he feels uneasy about marrying Maria, yet goes through with it because he gave his word. That same tension carries into their marriage, where it becomes clear that his heart is far more invested in the war than in building a life with her. It's striking because this is exactly what Maria's mother warned about in the previous episode, and here we see it play out. And in many ways, Hornblower begins to resemble a sterner version of Pellew, focused almost entirely on duty, command and the war effort. It's clever character development, the sort of arc you'd expect for a man with the weight of command on his shoulders, but it's not always easy to watch. Personally, I didn't really enjoy seeing Horatio become so cold at times, and even thoughtless. As a study of the toll of war and leadership, it is fascinating. And if this series had continued, this might have been a necessary turning point, but as it's his final appearance, it doesn't feel like the best way to really remember him. And the central plot, involving the rescue of Jerome Bonaparte and his American wife, is solid enough, but not the strongest in the series. Compared with the twists and high stakes of tension of loyalty, Duty feels gentler and less gripping. There are good moments, the revelation of Jerome's identity, and the return of the traitor wolf. Even the desperate naval action against a French invasion force. But overall the drama doesn't hit the same heights. And let's not get started with Betsy's American accent. That was not good. And I really hate to say it, but I did find myself fast forwarding her scenes. With Jerome himself, he never really causes real trouble aboard the ship, leaving the story without much in the way of shocking turns. He is a really fascinating historical character, so it's a real shame that he felt so underutilised. That said, like any Hornblower episode, Duty still has a lot of strengths. The wedding sequence at the start is touching, with Hornblower's nervous sickness played for charm, and Pellew's fatherly pride adding warmth. The return of Captain Bracegirdle is a welcome surprise. Bush gets some fine moments, and Maria herself is delightful. A character who probably deserved a little bit more time in the spotlight. And more than anything, the episode offers an interesting exploration of the impossible balance between being a captain and being a husband in wartime. For me, though these elements weren't quite enough to lift Duty higher, it's still a dignified farewell, but compared to the series' most thrilling installments, it feels subdued. Duty closes the saga softly rather than spectacularly, and while that makes it my number 8, it's still a thoughtful final chapter to one of television's greatest adventures. So next we have number 7, The Even Chance, or The Duel as it is known in the US. This episode's plot is actually quite simple but incredibly effective, and at its core, it's a coming-of-age story. And as opening chapters go, it does a fantastic job of throwing us straight into the harsh realities of naval life, while giving us characters we immediately care about. And I think part of what makes it work as a first episode is that it leaves room for the series to grow. It doesn't blow all of its cannons, so to speak. The drama is more grounded, the set pieces smaller, so that the later instalments can build in scale and spectacle without peaking too soon. The episode has some unforgettable moments. Archie welcoming Horatio aboard with the line "Welcome to Purgatory" sets the tone for the hardships to come. The miserable conditions of the midshipman's berth stands out, especially on rewatch as you realise how much this environment shaped Horatio and Archie's later kindness. Another highlight is the letter Horatio writes to his father, narrated over the image of him climbing the rigging. His words describe happiness and promise, even when we see how fragile and uncertain his position truly is. Jack Simpson, the antagonist, deserves special mention. For me, he is still one of the most vile villains Hornblower ever produced. His cruelty towards Horatio and Archie is unrelenting, and the way he charms his superiors while tormenting those beneath him make him instantly recognisable to anyone who has suffered under a bully. He may only appear in this single episode, but his impact lingers. Clayton is another character who may have only a brief amount of screen time, but has enormous heart. His kindness and his protectiveness of the younger midshipman stand in stark contrast to the brutality around him. His tragic death does hit harder than you'd expect from such a short-lived character, showing just how emotionally powerful this series could be right from the beginning. I think the even chance may not be the most dramatic or action-packed entry in the series, but that wasn't its role. It's a brilliant character study, showing Horatio's early struggles and his growth into the leader we know he'll become. And on first viewing, the sheer number of characters, ships and naval traditions can feel overwhelming, but that makes rewatching it even more rewarding. And ultimately, it's a heartwarming and somewhat bittersweet experience to revisit. Knowing where all these characters will go, it's moving to look back and see how it all began. The friendships, the hardships, and the first sparks of the legend Horatio Hornblower would become. Moving on to number 6, which is the Examination for Lieutenant, or the Fire Ship as it is known in America. What makes this episode so compelling is the way it balances his personal ambition with the endless demands of naval life. It's not enough to simply study and prepare, he has to lead, discipline, and make life or death decisions while carrying the weight of his own hopes. A lot of that drive comes from his past. Having suffered under Simpson's cruelty as a midshipman, Hornblower is clearly eager to shed that title once and for all. There's also an element of pride in play, a competitive streak that wants to prove. It's a very human motivation, and one that adds depth for his quest for promotion. The overlapping plot keeps the episode tense and layered. The plague quarantine allows us to see Hornblower as captain in all but name, rising to the challenge of command. His request for Pellew to send him books so he can keep studying, even when death feels like a real possibility, is a really nice moment. It shows the steel of a man who refuses to let circumstances dictate his future, and Pellew's faint smile at his determination is a wonderful touch. Bunting is an interesting character. He's not a traditional villain, but a study of desperation. He's hungry, grieving, and broken by the hardships of naval life, especially after watching his friend die. Watching him unravel is tragic, and though his actions make him a danger to the crew, it's hard not to pity him. Although he does come across as somewhat whiny at times, and his reaction in the food storage is akin to a small child having a tantrum in the supermarket, Hornblower's reluctant decision to kill him is a grim reminder of the cost of leadership and the loneliness of command. Captain Foster is another fascinating presence. Reckless, larger than life, he begins as an irritant, but becomes a kind of mirror for Hornblower, valuing courage over caution, but ultimately sharing in the moment of heroism that defines the episode. His fiery argument with Captain Hammond at the end also provides a bit of humour and levity, which is a welcome break from all that tension. What I especially like is that Hornblower doesn't breeze through his exam. Despite his brilliance as a seaman, his shy, reserved nature makes him falter under pressure. It's such a refreshing reminder that even Hornblower has weaknesses, and that intelligence and bravery don't always translate into confidence in a formal setting. fate intervenes in the form of the fire ship, but it feels earned, a test of courage rather than book learning. And this is one of those episodes that deepens on repeat viewing, when you can catch the nuances of Hornblower's growth and the subtle themes of duty and leadership, but on first watch it may not grab you quite as strongly as some of the series' more explosive instalments. Moving now to number 5, with Mutiny. Taking a break from the usual format, Mutiny plays out largely in flashback, framed by Hornblower's trial in Kingston. It's an interesting way to begin the story, immediately raising the stakes. How could our hero, the embodiment of naval duty, be accused of the most serious offence at sea? That setup grips you instantly, and the tension never really lets go. At the heart of the episode is the decline of Captain Sawyer. Once a hero of the Nile under Nelson, he is now a tyrant undone by paranoia. His abuse of young Wellard, who suffers under the captain, is harrowing to watch, and it forces the lieutenants into an impossible position. Mutiny means death, if discovered, but doing nothing could doom the ship. Watching Hornblower weigh his options, torn between loyalty to the Articles of War and compassion for his fellow officers, is some of the best drama in the series. The arrival of William Bush is another highlight. Paul McGann makes an immediate impact, playing Bush as steady, no-nonsense, and deeply professional. A perfect foil for Archie's emotional volatility. The contrast between Archie's passion, Bush's pragmatism, and Hornblower's cautious intelligence creates one of the strongest dynamics in the series. It is easy to see why Bush would go on to become Horatio's closest ally. The supporting cast shine as well. Buckland may be indecisive, but his role as a senior lieutenant gives weight to the mutiny plot. Wellard is a sympathetic echo of Horatio and Archie's younger days, making his suffering particularly poignant. And Hobbs, fiercely loyal to Sawyer, is a fascinating character, more misguided son than a villain, clinging to an idealised vision of the captain. One of the most powerful aspects of Mutiny is its deliberate ambiguity. Did someone push Sawyer into the hold, or was it an accident? I think we probably know who did it, but it keeps us guessing anyway. Mutiny is one of the series' finest studies of leadership and morality, and it marks the turning point where Hornblower, Kennedy and now Bush face the ultimate test. Not just how to fight the enemy, but how to survive their own captain. If there's one reason why Mutiny doesn't climb higher in my ranking, it's because it's only half the story. Much of the tension builds towards retribution, where the consequences truly unfold. But as a standalone episode, it's gripping, atmospheric, and full of character depth. It gives us new faces, recalls old traumas, and shows Hornblower at his most confident. Now we're at the halfway point with number 4, which I have The Duchess and the Devil. For me, The Duchess and the Devil is the episode where Hornblower truly came alive. The first 2 episodes laid the groundwork, but this one is where the show grabbed me for good. It's full of clever ideas, strong character moments, and a completely different setting that lets us see our heroes in new ways. Right at the start, Hornblower's ingenious and slightly dishonourable plan to disguise his men as French sailors is a brilliant touch. It shows us his quick wit and his willingness to bend the rules for the greater good. Of course, however, it does backfire in the end, and the capture that follows drives the bulk of the story. But it also sets the tone for Hornblower's career: bold plans, risky choices, and consequences that he has to navigate. The prison setting is a stroke of genius. By stripping the characters of their ship, their weapons and their status, it forces us to see how they cope when the usual rules of naval life no longer apply. With only a small group, Matthews, Styles, Oldroyd, and the ever difficult Hunter, we really get to know the men. Hunter in particular is fascinating, a thorn in Hornblower's side, constantly questioning his decisions and leading a faction of doubters among the crew. It's also the first real test of Hornblower's leadership, showing that even without a ship, he commands through determination and sheer willpower. And then there's the Duchess herself. She's definitely one of the most memorable guest characters in the series. Sharpe, witty, and completely unafraid of speaking her mind. Her humour bounces off Horatio's deadpan seriousness beautifully, and her boldness in hiding the secret papers for him proves her courage. The twist that she isn't really a duchess only makes her more endearing, a reminder that heroism doesn't only wear a uniform. This episode is also a gift to Archie fans. Left for dead at the end of the Even Chance, he reappears here in heartbreaking condition, half starved and ready to give up on life. Watching Horatio drag him back to health is one of the most touching arcs of the whole series. Their friendship, tested by so much hardship, shines here with warmth and humanity. It's not a big naval battle, but it's just as powerful in its own way. If there's a criticism, it's simply that the Duchess and the Devil is not as action heavy as other instalments, with much of the story confined to the prison. It lacked the sweeping sea battles that many people love, but that's also what makes it stand out. We get great tension, character-driven story, full of moral dilemmas, friendship and ingenuity. And make no mistake, this episode is a gem. It's witty, heartfelt, and the kind of full character work that really makes you invested in Hornblower. At number 3, we have The Frogs and the Lobsters. This is definitely one of the darkest episodes of the series, and for me that's part of what makes it so powerful. The Marquise is a chilling figure, a man consumed by his hatred of revolution, willing to butcher his own people in the name of loyalty to the crown. He's not cartoonishly evil, but he's utterly ruthless, which makes him stand out as one of Hornblower's most memorable antagonists. Watching his allies descend into tyranny forces Horatio into some of his toughest moral dilemmas yet, caught between duty to the mission and disgust at the Marquise's methods. The romance subplot with Mariette often divides fans, and it is true that she isn't as compelling as Hornblower's later love interests. But even here, the relationship serves a purpose. It shows Horatio's human side, reminding us that beneath that stiff uniform and stern duty lies a young man capable of vulnerability and longing. And it may not be the series' strongest romantic threads, but it adds a note of tragedy to the episode's already sombre tone. And what makes this episode really shine is the growth of Archie Kennedy. Having survived despair in The Duchess and the Devil, he steps into his own as a confident, capable lieutenant. His admission to Horatio that he panicked, followed by his extraordinary bravery crossing a collapsing bridge under fire to save his friend, is an incredible sequence. It feels like a culmination of his journey so far, the timid midshipman transformed into a true officer. Major Edrington is another highlight. He could have easily have been a one-note caricature of the pompous army officer, but instead he's witty, sharp and quite likeable. His banter with Hornblower gives the episode a welcome spark of humour amidst the darkness, and his professionalism makes him a very worthy ally. Overall, this is a gripping, morally complex instalment. It balances bleak subject matter with moments of genuine heroism, and it gives Archie Kennedy one of his finest moments. Dark, thought-provoking, and unforgettable, this episode more than earns its place in the top 3 for me. Moving now to number 2, which I have Loyalty. It is one of the most gripping stories in the Hornblower saga. It's full of twists, betrayals, and dramatic battles, but what makes it special is the way it balances high-stake naval adventure with deeply personal character development. Bush steps seamlessly into his role of Horatio's right hand, their partnership steady and natural, and it feels like the series has found its new rhythm. We also get the addition of Maria. She is played with such warmth and innocence that she immediately becomes one of the show's most endearing characters. There aren't many female roles in the show, and that's understandable given its naval setting, but Maria stands out as more than just a love interest. She brings humour, charm and vulnerability, and the contrast between her affection and Hornblower's complete obliviousness is both sweet and revealing. It says a lot about Horatio that he can face down cannon fire without blinking, but has no idea what to do with genuine affection. The subplot with Stiles and Matthews is another highlight. Stiles, so often the rough comic relief, gets real depth here. Wrongly accused, punished by his own captain, and humiliated in front of the crew, his pain is palpable, and Sean Gilder delivers one of his best performances. It's a heartbreaking reminder that Hornblower can no longer simply be one of the men, he is their captain, and that means his personal bonds must sometimes be sacrificed for the sake of discipline. The Mole storyline keeps the episode taut with tension. Discovering that the traitor is Wolfe, an Irishman siding with Napoleon, adds another layer of complexity, showing how divided loyalties can undermine even the tightest crew. The reveal is shocking, and the fallout keeps us guessing until the very end. There are also flashes of humour and humanity amidst it all. The infamous escape through the privy is both hilarious and oddly tense. Poor Styles, volunteering to go first, provided some much needed levity. The infiltration scenes are well paced, and the action sequences stand shoulder to shoulder with the series' best. But it's the conclusion that elevates loyalty into top tier for me. The midshipman Jack Hammond's sudden, senseless death is heartbreaking, especially given how likeable he is, even if he is slightly useless. Captain Hammond's reaction, grief-stricken and ultimately suicidal, is shocking but profoundly moving, especially as we find out that he himself is allied with Wolfe. Hornblower, however, doesn't condemn him. Instead, he chooses compassion, telling the world that Hammond died with honour rather than as a broken man. It's a subtle but powerful sign of Horatio's growth. He no longer sees war as purely black and white terms. He understands now that human weakness deserves understanding as much as bravery deserves praise. All of these elements, the suspense of the mole plot, the raw emotion of Styles and Matthews, Maria's introduction, and the ending, combine to make Loyalty one of the strongest episodes in the series. It's not quite number one on the list, but it does come very close, offering both action and character depth in equal measure. Right, number one, and for me it could only be Retribution. It is everything the series has been building towards in the earlier episodes. It brings together all the qualities that made the show special: thrilling naval action, moral ambiguity, camaraderie, humour, and gut-wrenching tragedy. For me, no other episode captures the full range of what Hornblower can be, quite like this one. The action is spectacular. The assault on the Spanish fort is full of energy, chaos and danger, yet it never feels like a spectacle for spectacle's sake. This isn't just a battle, it's a test of survival under the worst possible circumstances, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout. The courtroom framing heightens the drama. Unlike Mutiny, which raises the question, Retribution delivers the verdict, or at least the closest thing to one. The unresolved mystery of who pushed Sawyer is perfect storytelling. It doesn't quite tie things up neatly, and that's why it lingers. The lieutenant's silence, their guilt and their uncertainty hang heavy over the entire trial. And it's a kind of moral greyness that define great drama, forcing us to wrestle with questions. What makes it unforgettable though is the balance of tone. One moment is edge of your seat action, the next you have really good camaraderie between Horatio, Archie and Bush. Their bond feels real, and you can tell throughout the whole episode that it really annoys Buckland. That mixture of humour and loyalty makes the tragedy that follows hit even harder. Because this episode is also devastating. Sawyer's decline is a sad portrait of a man undone by his own mind, and I have to say, it is very realistic of a character who is suffering from mental problems. The writing manages to make Sawyer sympathetic even after his egregious acts from Mutiny. Hobbs's disillusionment grows as he notices that perhaps Sawyer really isn't as stable as he was, culminating in improving his worth at the end, where he decides not to blame Hornblower for Sawyer being pushed down the hole. Wellard's death is also quietly heroic, standing up to Sawyer. Then, in his final moments, he faces death with dignity, proving that he was not the frightened midshipman everyone thought he was. We even get that last moment of sanity from Sawyer, telling Wellard that he was a brave lad. It is all really well done. But Archie Kennedy for me is the true star of the episode. His arc across the series is remarkable, from bullied midshipman, to broken prisoner, to loyal friend, and finally to a hero. He embraces the courage he never believed he had, sacrificing himself in the end so Hornblower can live. His death is heartbreaking, and one of the most emotional moments in the entire series. And this is why Retribution stands as number one. It isn't just another episode, it feels like the culmination of everything. It takes the camaraderie of the Even Chance, the moral dilemmas of the Duchess and the Devil, the ambition of the examination for lieutenant, the darkness of the Frogs and the Lobsters, and the tension of Mutiny, and weaves them all together into one extraordinary story. It's exciting, it's moving, and it's really thought-provoking. It's more than just an episode of Hornblower, it's one of the greatest hours of proper historical television, a perfect storm of drama, action, and emotion. And from a series that really impressed, Retribution is the standout. And there you have it, my personal ranking of the Hornblower episodes from Duty at number 8 to Retribution number 1. As I said at the beginning, there are really no bad episodes here. Each one has something to offer. And what makes Hornblower so special is the way it blends history, humanity and heroism. Ioan Gruffudd gave us a Horatio who is brilliant and brave, but also deeply human. Shy, awkward, sometimes unsure of himself, but always driven by duty and a strong moral compass. Around him, the supporting characters, Archie, Bush, Matthews, Styles, and so many others, made this series not just about war, but about friendship, loyalty, and the cost of service. But of course, this is just my ranking. What about you? Which episode is your favourite? And do you agree that Retribution deserves the top spot? Which episode is your favourite? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear how other fans would rank them. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share and subscribe to help the channel grow, and follow me on my social channels. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.